Alright, welcome to Toll TV. This is our blue hydrangeas anyway tray insert. Fantastic news. We've got some really exciting news about these anyway trays. Number one, they're back in stock, so that is fantastic. We've been using the heck out of them when they disappeared for about 6 months. We were all kind of very sad. This we have got a new insert for. It's very thin, okay, and also there's a new size. Look at how cute that is. Okay, so you can choose, either size to do your project, depending on your space available. But because we've come up with this new thin insert, this could now be a placemat. Okay, so you could do a series of placemats like this. They're super duper affordable, they're super thin, they're super strong, and they are, of course, reversible, so you can paint on both sides, and then you can change them with your seasons. This project is a loose project. We have a fun, wonderful background. We've got this fantastic, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a metallic little trim border that we've done with a stencil. It's just chock full of learning experiences, so I hope that you enjoy it, and give us feedback. Let us know. This is our first project where we are filming straight down. We have finally figured out some technology with that, so hopefully it's not too, I don't do it too awkwardly. Enjoy the video. This is our anyway tray, and this is the panel, if I can get it out, panel that goes in the anyway tray. The anyway tray has a bracket that goes all the way along that supports the panel. These are super duper duper hard masonite panels. We recently have changed. This was the panel that we used before, and it was a 1/2 inch plywood panel that's also reversible, so you can paint 2 of them. And while we were at it, we decided to come up with something that was in between size. This is an MDF panel, this is a hardboard, this is plywood, and this is MDF. They're all different thicknesses for whatever preference you have. So you can order the tray as it comes with this panel. But if you desire to have the other panels, then you can order those separately online. They're all reversible. They are all also, you can use them just for art in your kitchen. So like when you're not displaying, or not in your kitchen, but anywhere in your house, when you're not displaying the tray with wine on it, you might put it in your dining room in an easel. And so that makes it a display board as well. Okay, so what I like about this panel is it can actually be used, as a placemat. It's big enough that you can put your silverware and a big 10-inch plate here. So it's not too big, it's not too small. But what that means is when you're not using these panels as tray inserts, you could paint up more and have them be reversible placemats. And it's just the right thickness. It's not too thick, not too thin. Thick enough to stay. We actually had Dustin, who weighs about 200 pounds, stand on this in the tray, and it was sturdy enough to withhold a 200-pound man. Anyway, so the prep on this is not quite the same as if you were prepping one of these panels. Now this panel would be perfect if you were going to stain it because it still has that wood grain. You obviously can't stain this panel, so that's why you might choose different panels. Okay, so enough about the panels. There's also a really new, cute little version of this that's on the website. And I'll be painting on that soon, I'm sure. Okay, the very first thing we want to do is prep this. We can put a sealer on it just to make sure that everything sticks. Sometimes you put sealer on not to just seal the surface, but also to ensure that all of your levels of paint bond together. Okay, as I'm getting ready to put the base coat on my tray, I have my little pile of paints over here. I hit one bottle, knock it into my pile of paint, and then it rolls across the palette and all this kind of stuff. One of the things that is a helpful hint is to take a bucket, any kind of little bin, shoebox, anything like that. Put your paints and supplies that you're using there, and then move them out of harm's way, because that could have been just on the rug and all that kind of stuff. All right, one of the things I want to talk about is you can get rid of your mess in one of 2 ways. You can use a black nonstick mat where the paint will wipe off, or you can use these little painter's pins here, and they have pointy little heads to them so that they don't. You can put those, and then you can keep your mess up off of, and they're very sturdy, and that kind of thing. As long as you're holding it still, if you're rolling on, sometimes you can be knocking around, but they're actually very, very sturdy. All right, so we'll apply some multi-purpose sealer to our surface. Okay, and I'm going to show a couple of different ways that you can apply this. We'll show number one. I'm going to go ahead, when you're doing a surface, it's a good idea to do your prep to the whole thing. I'm using a black nitrile glove. This is a chemical safe glove, meaning that when you put it in stain or any kinds of those chemicals, it won't fall apart. The fingers don't fall off when you're staining and stuff like that. It's also latex free. If you have a latex allergy like I do, then it's good to have a source of latex free gloves. And I love to use these with the wood putty as well. They don't stick to the wood putty. So what I'm going to do is show you the varnish sponge for prepping. I'm going to hold my surface, and I'm simply going to wipe this all the way across. And look how fast. This is 16 or 18 inches wide, something like that. I'm just going to turn it around. No streaks, no muss. You can do it for varnishing, base coating, any of that kind of stuff. Now, one of the nice things about these pins, now I'll go back over a couple times looking for anything that needs to be leveled out. That's how fast you can do a giant surface like this. Needless to say, if you're trying to brush it on, and what we'll do is we'll turn this over, so I can do this right while it's, as long as I'm not sliding it around on top. If I'm brushing, you're going to end up, you can already see the streaks and all that kind of stuff versus just that wipe on. What I love about varnishing with these varnish sponges is the varnish dries almost instantly, which means that you don't get any of the pulling and things like that. It just, you've got one whole coat on, it dries right away, and you can go right to the next coat. Because you're going so quickly, it doesn't give you any of that pulling like when you're brushing into it. Now, the other way that you can prep is to use your foam roller. The 2-inch is perfect size for our craft industry. And we get a little bit more of this. Speed-wise, you know, it's not so much really about the speed, like I'm not worried about how fast or slow I'm going, but I really don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing this. So I can roll on my surface. Now, when you roll, you're going to get just a little bit of tooth. The way that you get by with getting rid of the tooth, notice that this is even way slower than that varnish sponge was. And then what I'm going to have to do, now I think it's a very fast way to apply an even coat. To get rid of the bumpies, I'm going to have to keep rolling and rolling, and then it'll be very smooth. But it takes a little bit more time. Okay, so sometimes this is okay, and sometimes it's not the preferable way. If I can get by with it, if I'm not painting on rock lawn, which I always use a roller when I paint on rock lawn, the varnish sponge or the brush will put on the paint too heavily. So when I'm painting on a regular surface, this is how I'm going to prep it, is with the varnish sponge, because it's the fastest, easiest, bestest way to apply my finish. Right, I have finished this coat, and I want to flip it over. I know that you saw me as I'm doing this. I'm sliding around on the surface. I haven't taken a break. I haven't done anything strange. I flip it over and show you that there are no scratches, no mars, no anything where those little pins were. So that is what makes this an absolute best friend when you need to do multiple sides. You can use them as easels as well. You can put them under ceramic and glass and every other thing that you want to do. It is a really nice little system for keeping the mess up. The black mat is perfect. I wouldn't paint without one anymore. But what this doesn't do for you is it doesn't prevent you from having to wash it. These little guys right here prevent me from having to take one more step. I don't like cleaning. One more step to not have to clean my black mat up, which is just misting with water and wiping, but I don't have to even do that now. Okay, I've got my both sides done, and as I was inside cleaning the my sponge and stuff, it occurs to me that we have some questions that we've asked at conventions and things. One of them is, where do you put your, when you clean your sponges, do you go ahead and clean them in your sink in your kitchen? People have said for years that if you throw your paint down the sink, then you're going to get that gunk dried up in your drain pipes. So there's a couple things you can do. You can throw your dirty paint water down your toilet bowl, which will handle any buildup of waste better than at the kitchen sink. Or you can let your water flush it through the system. Okay, so if you let the water run for a little bit, then it's going to chase that stuff straight out, and while it's still wet and in its liquid form, it's not going to allow it to dry in the pipe. Okay. Next, I've got my sponge, which I have squeezed out, but I can't ever get enough of the moisture out of my sponge. So what I'm going to do is make a little sandwich of a couple paper towels, and I'm going to use my foot pounds, which unfortunately is more pounds than I'd like to have, and I'm just going to step on it between my sandwich of paper towels. And what that does for me is it pulls out a lot more liquid. Okay, now it's dry to the touch almost. And then I can do the same thing with my roller. Step on it and roll it around just a little bit. And then that gives me a tool that I can use again really quickly. I mean, look at that, saturated all the way through. Okay, so now I've got a tool that I can use again without waiting for it to be sopping wet, then drier, then drier, then drier. All right, I've decided on a blue palette for my hydrangea tray. And what I'm going to do is mix a little bit of uniform blue with a little bit of country blue. I want maybe a quarter, so 25% of my country blue in my uniform blue, because I don't want it too light purpley like that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and mix my puddle, see how much darker that is, and it's a little bit more neutral, not so glowing. Okay, so then we're going to get our varnish sponge that is still damp. I do this in real time, so I'm actually painting this in without, you know, pauses if I can help it. I'm just going to tip on some of my stuff. My multi-purpose primer is dry. Now I'm going to put on a thin coat, and I'll be able to come back to this in just like 2 minutes and be able to coat it again. Okay, now this looks very thin, but you know what happens when you do too thick of a base coat on your surface. You end up with the ridges, you end up with a surface that never really cures, or at least for a long time. This is so nice and sheer, it will dry almost immediately. Okay, so just get that nice and on there. And this is not, it looks like it's streaky only because it is streaky, but it's not streaky as in ridgy streaky. Okay, there's the coat we wanted. Now this is already dry over here. Okay, so once this all dries, then we'll put our second coat on. Okay, a lot of times when I'm doing projects and I have you listen to whether or not it needs to be sanded. So here's our, okay, that has virtually no tooth to it that I can even feel. It is a smooth, toothish tooth, you know what I'm saying? It's not like ice, but it's not at all catchy in any way. So I'm going to go for my second coat, and I've just left my sponge on my palette, just on its face there. If you're going to be gone for a while, put it in a plastic baggie. I always keep those sandwich baggies without the Ziplocs on them handy. I roll up my rollers in them and my sponges and things like that. Okay, so now we're going to do our second coat. Okay, so I'm using a moistened, because it was not quite dry, varnish sponge, and it can be a base coat sponge, and you can use them interchangeably. But see, the second coat is covering everything. So 2 very thin coats, 1 washing application, meaning I didn't have to go and, you know, clean everything out. I didn't have to wait more than, I think it was 2 minutes maybe. Okay. So we've talked about doing Mythbusters and things like that for the videos, and one of them is which would be the fastest way to base coat. And we've done this once in a class in Washington. And definitely the varnish sponge beat, hands down. We had 3 professionals all do a base coat, and boy, this little puppy for, you know, $1 or $2 is just a lifesaver. All right, the look that I want to go for on top of my tray is a striated, kind of a streaky mood. I've got this fantastic new brush. I just did my little test down here. It is I think it might be a stenciling brush. I'm not even sure what its purpose is, but it just looked wonderful. So it's full, good length bristles, domed on the top. The handle is brilliant. Okay, so I'm having a little bit of brush love here. Okay, and I've got another one too that's got the dome top with the longer bristles. I was hoping, and I like it, that I would be able to get the streaky look using this brush, and it's working just fine. So what I'm using is I'm going to use Traditions Faux Finish Medium. Okay, and I'm going to use my big oval glaze brush. Any kind of oval glaze is fine. And it's going to kind of come out clear. And I'm going to put this on. Then I think I'm going to have to mix a little bit of extender in. All right, the reason I know that I'm going to need a little extender is that's actually not too tacky, but it feels already in my brush like it's being a little tacky. So I'm going to add just a little bit of extender to make it have that liquidy kind of flow. Okay, I've got a lot of medium in this brush. Now I'm going to get the whole tray rocking and rolling. I think I'll move into these little pyramids. I'm loving the idea of not having to clean up after myself. Boop. Okay. Nice and thin. You've got to kind of have a plan for this. You can't do this and then let it dry. You need to have it drying all at one time. Okay, now what this is going to do is allow me to put paint on and then take it back off. Okay, we'll get this all on there and we'll start streaking. I'll just go right back over what I did. Okay, now, because of the fact that I want my strokes to end up nice and smooth, I'm going to have to take myself off of this pyramid for the next step, so I'm actually going to have to clean something up. Remember, if you've already painted the back side of your tray, to make sure that you don't rub it around in a mess on your palette. Okay. So now I'm going to get into, with the very tip of my dry brush with soft lilac, okay, and then with nice, big, soft strokes going in a perfect horizontal stroke, put streaks on top. I'm just kind of stippling it over here so I don't end up with a big glob. Whoops. That distributes it over the brush evenly. Okay, a little pulling right there. So I'll pull it in. Okay, now what this is doing is it's leaving streaks or scratches in and removing the medium where the streaks are laying down, and then it's putting paint down every other one, if that makes sense. And that's exactly the look that I want. I'm always about some kind of strange background. Okay, nice and even. Being a little chintzy with my paint here. Don't want a lot of paint, so I'm going to take some of that back off. If you put too much, then you might as well just base coat it, right? Now I'll look for unevenness, and I'll go and streak that on where it needs to not be uneven. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go the opposite way. Okay, now we're going to go the opposite way. Just streaking across. Yoop. If you pull it towards you and you hold the edge of the tray, then it won't cause as much of it won't move around as much on you. Yeah. Now I'll turn it around. I've got some unevenness going, but you know what? I'm not going to worry about that. That is going to be the charm. So what I'll do is I'll put some more unevenness in to my piece. Okay. All right, now I'm looking at it to assess. Now I'm wondering if I can't take, yeah, you know, I really like it like it is. Okay, I don't think I'm going to wonder. I was going to say if I took some retarder, the extender, and I brushed it with a clean brush, I might be able to take some other elements up. But I really do like this almost like, what do you call it, texture, like almost like a fabric texture. I like this. This is good. All right, we'll talk about the differences between filberts. This is going to be a filbert intensive project. I'll zoom in just a little bit here. Okay, and what I want to show you is this is the stroke filbert that is a low Cornell brush. And this is, when I make a stroke with this, the reason we call it a stroke filbert is because when I make a stroke, you press and then you twist and you bring it to its little tail thing there. And what you do is this line is basically nice and pointy and comes exactly where you need it to be, because what's happening is this is actually not shaved from side to side. Okay, it's cut like a filbert, but it's not shaved. This is the Patty's Favorite Dry Brush, which is a royal kind of filbert. It's actually an oval glaze because it is cut like a filbert and it is shaved from side to side, which is what makes it brilliant for dry brushing, but not so brilliant for making leaf strokes. So when I come here, I'm going to get a lot of raggedy, roughly yucky stuff right there. Okay, and so when we do that again, you can see these things, because it's shaved from side to side, they all leave the ground at a different time. Okay, so all filberts are not created equally. And what we're going to want for this is we really want to have a really good, fat, strokey kind of hydrangea petal. Wah! Hello, I turned the wrong way. So that's the kind of petal we're going to want to make, and so I definitely need a really good filbert brush in good condition. Okay, now we'll start off really loose, and then we're going to chop things up just a little bit. Now, because I used a medium on this surface, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of glazing medium. Whoops, a little bit of glazing medium. So what I want to tell you about this kind of stuff is mediums, a lot of times you don't know which ones, sometimes they say, sometimes they don't, can be reactivated with water. Okay, so I don't want to dig holes in this, and all of you have had experiences, I would assume, where you have dug a hole in your painting. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to protect our painting. This is a before you varnish type of medium, and what's really neat about glazing mediums, when you layer them, it actually allows the light to go in and it refracts from the back through the layers of the glazing medium, and it gives depth to your painting. So when you use glazing medium frequently and use layers of it, then your painting will get deeper and deeper and deeper. You can thin this up to 50% with water. Okay, so I'm going to use my big old brush with some water in it. Okay, and I'm just going to mix it on my palette, and I'm going to apply one thin, even coat over the top of this, and that is going to protect my painting from lifting, and then I won't dig a hole. All right, I'm going to take my half pipe compass, and I'm going to adjust. It has, what I like about the half pipe compass, and you've heard me say it over and over again, is that it has the cap to conceal the lead and the point, because I've impaled myself on this a million times. I'm going to widen it out to about an inch-ish, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to run it right along. This is the best way. This is probably 3/4 of an inch. The best way to make a mark evenly and quickly. Okay, now that just gives me a nice faint line. I'm going to use my border stencil. And can I see my nice faint line? It's so faint. Can't see my nice faint line. Okay. Then I'm going to measure again. Okay, make that go up there, about even, and then I'll reset from the edge to the edge of that. And I'll make my second border. As long as you don't mess around with squeezing this, when you hold it, you want to hold it from side to side. So don't be squishing it like that or you'll shut it. This has extra leads on board so that if you need replacements, you have them right with you. Oops. That screws on so it's secure. This one has lasted me, gosh, just a long, long, long time. Now I'm going to tape. Just regular blue tape is fine. I want to make sure that my surface is cured enough to tape, because if I tape and I lift on these mediums and stuff, if they're fresh, then you will have lifting, so you do want to be careful of that. Alright, I've got my surface tape. Now I'm going to take my thumbnail and I'm going to run it along the edge of my tape to make sure that I don't have leaking going on underneath my two gaps. I'm going to use the same color that I did my background with. So I'm going to mix 1/4 of the country blue into my uniform blue. Then from there, I'm going to use the ink sweeper. And what we're going to do to use the ink sweeper is we're going to tap it on here. The reason we're going to use the ink sweeper, number one, it's big. Okay, and that will make short work of what we need to do here. But the other thing that you want to be careful, I could use a brush and apply this, but I could be sweeping stuff underneath my my surface here. So what I'm going to do, and I just want to do one little trial run before I go painting stuff all up. Make sure that my border is going to fit, and it fits perfectly. Okay, so then what I'll do is I'll just tap straight up and down on this. And what that's going to do for me is it's going to make no bleeding underneath my tape line. And I've got a place to put my finger right on in there. Very comfortable to use. And this is a non-porous kind of, and notice I'm starting in the middle. That's when I have the most, a new load of paint. And then I'll tap towards the edge. And that's just control. The painting is really all about levels of controlling things. You control the amount of medium, the amount of water, and then you have success. So just, and I'm tapping it to make sure that I've got even texture. If I just do one smooch, I'll end up with like a, and I can't, can I make it go wider? If I do one smooch like that, then what happens is I get like a lot of texture. So to get that even, I'll just keep tapping it until I like the texture. And it's even. This is a nice fast way. This is already dry up here, so I can go back and do my second coat. I'm going to get in, I'm going to get out, I'm going to get the tape off. That is, once again, measure of control. Yeah, this puts the paint on so nice and thin. Anytime you're using a paintbrush, you're going to have residual paint going along for the ride. And if you don't, then you can't get the paint to flow. So really, because it's a brush, you have to have enough in it for the paint to flow, and because you have enough in it for the paint to flow, that means you have too much paint, and it's going to leave a ridge or whatever. Okay, so now I'll take this off, and then I have a perfectly wonderful little line. Okay, and I'll do the other side. The way I take care of my little ink sweeper is I just push it underwater, and right now I'm just going to sink it in my water basin, my brush basin. This is the Artist Studio water basin, brush basin. This rocks because there's enough holes in it to do everything that you need to do. It's got my, up front is usually where I load water, this is usually where I clean brushes, this is usually where I store things. So I'm just going to sink that right on in there and leave that there. It doesn't react with the brush cleaner, so I could keep some brush cleaner up here in my basin. I could put some color float if I'm floating. That's a medium that makes the water better to float with. Okay, and then what I really love is when I'm using my Raphael liner or any natural fiber brushes if I want to wake this brush up. So when it's dry, it's the ugliest thing you've ever seen, right? As soon as I get it wet, okay, it snaps right into shape. So what I'll do is I'll allow this to soak over here, and I know that my brush is going to be in fine condition because it's on the supports. Okay, so the dirty brushes that I use, I set here. When I'm making my notes for my pattern packets, I just take my dirty brushes and I make my notes with that. So it's very well organized for this. I thought, who could improve on a water bucket? But this is really, truly a great improvement. Okay, next we are going to make our stencil sticky. And the way we're going to make our stencil sticky is we're going to tack it over and over again. Now what I'll do, I'll go ahead and use a palette paper sheet. I have got the tack it over and over. This is from way before, okay, and that isn't, there's no residue, and it makes it, this was from the Enchanted Brush Box. This is probably from the Roses and Lace. So, but I don't have this one sticky all the way down the line. It's much easier when you have it sticky all the way down the line. To apply, medium, I'm going to go ahead and use, and I'm going to get some palette out here. I think I'll just go here. Put some out on my palette. I'm going to use the ink sweeper again. You could go rinse your ink sweeper out or buy a couple of them. I use them for lots of stuff, so I like having several. I have a whole jug of sponge stuff. Okay, so this is going to be just applied just like we did the other. Okay, and what I like about doing the ink sweeper instead of the roller, which is what I used to use, the roller puts on an excessive amount of tack it over and it makes it very tacky. And what that means is sometimes your stencils can tear. You don't want your stencils to tear. So I'm just going to go ahead and tack everywhere. If it's too tacky, you can put it on your fabric or something, and that will remove a little bit or fuzz up the tack, as it were. And then you'll let this dry till it's clear. And this stays sticky. You can use the Winsor Newton brush cleaner and restorer to take off the medium. You can soak it in like the bottom of your sink, and then it gets kind of gummy looking, and then you can scrub it off with like a blue paper towel kind of thing. But I find it better to just go ahead and leave it sticky, and this I am going to rinse out right away or I will ruin my ink sweeper. If you get it on your hands, you use olive oil to take it off. And then a big discovery that we found out is we can stick these tacket sheets, the tacky stencils, we can stick them to freezer paper, to the shiny side of freezer paper. So I'm cutting freezer paper the size of my stencil, I'm punching a hole in it, putting it in my binder, then I can flip my pages, it sticks to it, but when I tear it off it doesn't overstick, and that was what was causing us problems. So freezer paper works fantastic. We thought it was wax paper, but wax paper, after 6 removals, wax paper tends to, the wax part wears off, and then this sticks to the paper, and that's bad. So we like this better, the freezer paper better. Okay, while I'm waiting for my tacket to dry, I wanted to introduce a new product. This is what they call a bridge, and it has about an inch riser, very, very sturdy, thick plexiglass with a very smooth finish. What this is for is when you want to do something that you don't want to be resting your hand on your surface, then you can use the bridge and you can paint on your piece while resting your hand on something. Resting your hand on your surface or on a bridge gives you control. Okay, so that is, once again, there's that C word, right? Okay, so one of the other things that it does for you, I have short fingers. I'm 5'3", and I just don't have very long hands. The longer you can use a round brush, the longer your round brush is, then the better off you're going to paint with it, the more control you're going to have. And the reason for that is because it's going to carry more paint, okay? And it'll also swirl and do the swirly kind of things better. So what you can use the bridge for is to increase the height of your hand, because like ultimately how far you can push your brush up and down with the bristle length coming into play is how much control you have. Okay, so if I have very long bristles but I only have this distance of my hand to use, then what happens is I can't get a really good flow dip movement. I can't move my hand. If I'm way up here and I'm, an inch above my surface, I can choke down on my brush and I can get a nice, lovely flowing movement to my piece. Okay, that's why I think a lot of people struggle when they're trying to do the curlicues. They don't have any distance. They can't get that control and that big, see how big my hand can move, and I'm not dragging on the ground. If I'm down here, I can't do that. I cannot get that. I can't get a good rounded movement. Here, I can get a really good rounded movement. Okay, when we are getting to the border, which is going to happen next, I am going to need to decide between my metal powders. And this is a paper towel. I found it fascinating. I had wiped off my metal powders on a paper towel, and then the next day I picked up the paper towel and noticed how stinking flexible those are. And I love that you can see the sheen and the shine and everything like that. And so this is my little sample towel here. But we're going to decide, and there's silver and there's platinum, and one is just a little bit warmer than the other, and so I'll be needing to decide between these. These are one of our best-selling products because you have so much control over them. Oh boy, I feel like I'm using like the C word for everything. The next thing we're going to do is check our tackiness factor here. Okay, and yep, we're nice and clear and dried. We're going to lay this down, and this is our jewel border stencil. And it is amazingly, and I'm sure it was an intentional accident, sized to go from end to end on this tray. So like I'm not even going to have to move it. But it is keyed so that if you want to continue it on a really long floor cloth or something, it perfectly matches up with its end. So when you lay this end down on this end, it is keyed to be the exact next step. And all four of them, all four sizes are keyed that way. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a texture glass medium, and this is a flexible medium, so you can use it on floor cloths and banners and things like that, and it absolutely bends. It is not waterproof though, so if you put it on your clothing, even though it's flexible, it will like wash off. So you don't want to use it in a place where you're going to use a lot of water. All right, so I've got my stencil tacked down, and then I'm going to take my palette knife, and I'm just going to wipe. This is when you're going to be so happy that you have tack it over and over on your piece. You're just going to fill in, wipe straight across with the texture glass. Okay, straight across. Then you take this stencil to the sink and you'll just clean it in cold water. Okay, try not to do ridges if you can help it. Get this filled in, and then you'll lift it straight up, wash it off, and then you'll do the other side. And the washing in the water doesn't affect the tack it over and over. It'll feel kind of slippery, and then you'll notice that the tack it over and over has tacked back up once it dries. So it does not wash off. I think that's a really excellent feature. Once you've got your stencil sticky, you don't want to have to do it every time. It was the storage that was driving me crazy, because a pile of stencils with tacket on them get very sticky, but that freezer paper is perfect. Okay, so get that all the way down the list here. Maybe I'll just smooth it one time. Okay, maybe we'll smooth it 2 times. Okay, and then we'll just pull this straight up. Okay, now a couple of these might have little raised tips to them, and what we'll do with that is we'll just lightly sand it once it dries. This will dry perfectly clear, and it looks really, really cool. It gives it a dimensional effect without really adding any color or dimension. So I'll go ahead and tack my other, or glass my other side, and we'll let this dry, and I'll bring you back. Okay, I'm waiting for this to dry, so I am going to go ahead and use my bridge. I think that this will be a fantastic thing. And you want to make sure that you're putting it where you're not waiting. Does it fit? Oh, it almost fits all the way across. So I'm going to use my triple threat Ghost Writer to sketch my pattern on. So it's being designed on camera, so there really isn't a pattern until I draw it on. This is the gray ceramic lead, and then that is a roller ball that has no ink, and that's what you trace your patterns with. White with ceramic lead, sorry, and a super duper comfy grip. as well as a stow behind. If you have this, you already know this, but a stow behind eraser. So it's not a triple threat, it's a quadruple threat. Alright, so as I'm doing this, I want to make sure not to run my hand through the drying stuff. And I'm going to sketch on my pattern, and what I like about this is I can make, you know, a pattern right there. It comes off with varnish, with paint, with water, and with an eraser. So I can take it off with any of those mediums, and I'll never end up with my little tracing lines left behind. Alright, to get really soft flowers, we're going to use the faux finish medium and the uniform blue. Just going to brush mix them together, and we're going to be slip slapping. This is going to be messy. I'm going to go ahead and start away from, I want it transparent, so I want a little bit more medium. That's what I'm going to use this for. I don't want big, heavy, dark flowers. And so what I'm going to do is just bring this color out to my circles. I'm going to make kind of like slip-slapped circles. Try to keep them separate so that you don't end up having to guess where your lines are and stuff. Now mess up the outer edge. That's going to give you that ghosty hint of a place where it says there's something else happening underneath that, and I don't need to know what it is exactly. You're going to assume that it's flower. And then I'm going to darken up my inside. So I'll do this both wet and wet. Okay. I have heard about bridges. I have to tell you, I've heard about bridges. I was not necessarily as informed as I could have been about what their purpose was for. I always thought it was what Justiva painters use, and like, I'm not a Justiva painter, so why would I need a bridge? And after a little bit more research, I was like, yeah, this rocks. Nice to be able to keep my hands out of the stuff that's drying over here and out of my wet paint. You know, if you're doing wet and wet and I've got all this tacky stuff going on, I'm going to want to make sure that I'm not messing up what I'm doing or running my wrist through it or whatever. Okay, so I'm just going to do this technique for all of these. I don't want to bore anybody, so I'm filling it in. And then I'm going to go back with a little bit heavier in the middle area. Mess up that outer edge. What this is doing for us, this is not going to be the color of my hydrangeas. This is going to be the color of the shadows of my hydrangeas. Okay, so I'll just go in, start with our heaviest color here. You could make a bridge for yourself out of wood. What I like about this is the sheer flow of it. Wood would be a little bit trickier to do that. Could be done though. Okay. Maybe we'll just make that whole back corner be dark, like there's a whole bunch of flowers going on over there. These are leaves. So I'm just picking up with my brush mixing that. Really important to have just that fluttery strokes out there, kind of residual. Okay, and I think I'll go ahead and bring that, whoops, no medium, out over here as well. Like that's just flowing out from that corner. And maybe we'll bring one more out there. Painting right on it, it's the same color, so we're good. Okay, so then I need to make this one darker. We don't want it blocked really heavily. You can make that one darker in the middle. So I want it darker in the middle because that's where it's going to be the deepest. Okay, so normally you would darken circles on their edges and that would give it a sphere-like look. What I'm doing is I'm giving it the dark in the middle, and then when we put our top flowers on, you'll see those deeply darkly things back there, and it will give it depth. I know that a lot of you are really afraid of loose painting. Please don't be afraid. It's the easiest. Just quit thinking so hard. That's probably what most of us do. Just go with it. Squint your eyes a lot. You wouldn't believe how much that helps. To not be able to see exactly what you're doing is very, very helpful, because then your brain just doesn't make decisions as much, I guess. Alright, so I'm going to do the same thing up here to the upper edge, and I think I need one more flower. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's why. So we have not got a good balance for numbering things. Oh, I got messy over here and spattered. I'll make that be one more little lumpy flower. Okay, liking it so far. Alright, the next thing we'll want to do is put an established place for our leaves. We're going to do the same thing that we did for the hydrangeas. We're going to mix them in, and they're still a little bit tacky. Not too bad. I haven't really given them any time to dry. I think this green might be just a little bit electric, so we're going to touch into a little bit of our uniform blue just to bring it down into the family a little bit more. Okay, and I don't want it to be too blue, but I don't want it to be so green. So it's just a touch and the medium. Probably equal parts medium. I noticed that I put out a wad of that and a wad of that. They're about the same size, and I still have a little bit of paint left and not so much medium. So I'm using equal parts or better. Alright, so now we'll go in and we'll make a couple of places for some leaves to stick out. I'm usually a fairly ugly hydrangea leaf maker. I don't give it any time or care, and I don't want these to be ugly hydrangea leaves. I want these to have a little bit more interest to them. So I'm going to do some dreamy things. They're just going to be little hints of things that might be happening back there. Okay, just sticking out here and there. Okay, now what I want to do is kind of mess up. I'm going to dry out my brush just a little bit. Stick in some greens. Just scribbling some greens here and there. This leaf will go that way. Okay, and just give it just a little bit of something going on. Ah, that's a lot of blue. Maybe increase the base. If we get these in there now, when we put the colors on top, what will happen is we'll be able to cover up any stop points with our flower petals. I'm going back in and making them a little bit more solid near the base. Okay, and this gives it just a little bit of something going on. Now these are going to lighten tremendously, so I'm not going to worry about our leaves. Our leaves could get bigger. Maybe we'll have some big ones coming out over the tops of. Hydrangea leaves are pretty monster sized. Big brush mix little project here, okay? Okay, we'll go over here. Definitely want some coming out this side. So, you know, I encourage you, these little plaques are so cheap. I encourage you to make one as a placemat or use rock lawn, and then, you know, try that, see if you like this technique, and then, you know, maybe order a tray then or something like that. You know, don't not do the project because you think that that you're not going to like doing loose flowers. You might learn to love them. Okay. All right, the next thing we're going to do, and my border is drying nicely, I love it. We're going to put the blue in with the Hauser dark green to make a bluey, greeny thing. Not too much medium, a little bit. Dry off my brush a little bit. I need to darken it up where things are going to flow in, where the shadow side it might be. Around here it's might be not so much. A little bit more on medium. Okay, so we're making sure to tone that green because it's a very kind of viridian-y looking green. Thin it with your medium, and then we're going to make maybe not a little, whoops, not the glass medium, then you'll make a hard shiny spot on your paint. Now when I get out to, let's go in closer, get you turned around here, and watch what happens when I'm coming out from the center of this. I can draw myself like a little line, and I'm going to just use the tip and scumble a little bit. So I can be solid at the back end, and then I'm going to be not so harsh. So I'll just scumble and softly touch, and that will blend that paint out so that I don't end up with a harsh line. Okay, so we're just going to give it some hints of, and then you can use the perfect mop, which is your finger. Okay, so we'll go here, same thing. We'll just start getting some of these colors in there. Pull you out. Okay, this is the first time that we've done the videoing from overhead. So if you see something you like or you don't like, let us know. I'm sure that we'll get better at it as we go. Colors need to be darkened. That's where they come out. Look at how cool that texture looks. Can you see it? That's neat. Neat, 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 neat. Alright, we're going to take a little bit of our bristles here, and we're going to pull in a little bit on the edges. I need to mix that with the blue. Feather that in. We can bring some light on the other side. A little bit lighter still. Just give them just that little bit of a ruffly kind of an edge. Sorry, Joe. Okay. Give that just a little bit of the ruffly kind of edge. Put you out there. We'll do the same with the other side. Okay, so we'll give one side its little ruffles, and then we'll give the other side its little ruffles. Turn like this, it's 2 leaves. We'll go for the dark. Okay, I've got a little bit of a glare. So when we're talking about glare, another holding technique that you can use is the Artist Buddy, which has its levels of adjustment, and I'll put mine on low, maybe even lower, and then this locks it down. Okay, so what that does for us is that gives me an ability to prop this and get the glare off of it without having to hang onto it and hold it. This is an interesting length of a project right here. I mean, it's not a small, tiny thing. And I could turn my piece any way I want, and I can have it rotating as well and unlock it. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. If you want to end your back and shoulder pain, then quit hunching over your projects, because that's what causes that, that repetitive. I have to chuckle. One day I was shaking my bottle of paint, you know, and I'm sitting here and I'm doing this, shaking, 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 right? And so I've got it shaking, and then I put the brush down and I'm like, or the bottle down, and I'm like, oh man, I wonder why my pad of my thumb hurts so bad. Well, I've been doing this for like 10 years and causing all kinds of damage to my hand. Same thing with us hunching over our painting pieces. So when you raise it up, what happens is you unscrunchify and you breathe better. You'll find that your posture's better. You'll be exercising your muscles better. It is just a healthy benefit to sit upright when you paint, but you can't do that unless your project follows you. Okay, so that is, and I can't tell you how many emails we've gotten saying, oh, this just solved my health problems. Obviously not everything, but it definitely is something that you should pay attention to if you are a squuncher. Okay, so this is just really like color blocking right now. So I'm getting that dark side on there, getting a little bit of that shape going. Okay, and like right now it looks like we're doing a whole project of leaves. And we probably don't want that to be the case, but we're not ready to go forward yet. I need most of our leaf details on before we go forward. So dirty brush, I'm going to go into the brighter green. Okay, and I'm just going to give it some accents. Okay, here and there on our brighter sides. So we'll just give it some of its accents. I'm looking at this, and I have to tell you, I think that this is a disaster with the leaves right now. And I know, and I'm saying this not to self-deprecate, I'm saying this because I'm looking at it and I know they're blocked in. I know I'm going someplace else. I know that my destination is not USS Shipwreck here. And so I know that, and I want to share that with you, because when you're looking at this, you might be like, oh my God, what is she doing? Okay, well, I'm not done yet. Okay, so we have to hang on and save that judgment until we are finished. Sometimes projects are really kind of yucky looking when we get into the middle. There's that dark before the the dawn kind of saying. And we want to make sure that we don't close down before we get there. So this is when, thankfully, I've painted enough projects in my life that I can stay the course and say, okay, I'm willing to work my way through this, okay, and to continue. All right, next, let's do a little bit more leafy texture. I've switched to a Workhorse angle shader. I'm going to load on the tip, on the toe, just Hazard Green Medium, okay? And then I'm going to go on the dark side of the leaf. Start at the top, and I'm going to make these little kind of elephant ear strokes, just like a little swipe. I'm going to bring that in. It's going to blend with that darker. I'm going to widen my leaf out just a little bit, okay? And we'll do the same on all of them. Make sure that you're not transparent when you're doing this, okay? So like I don't want to be able to see my background, so be next to or near to your shadow area or draw that color down in. Okay, I'm going to get wider at the base. We'll go with a little bit of the lighter green on the other side. And maybe scumble in just a little bit to blend it. Okay. That's going to give us just a little bit wider base. I'm liking the wider base idea. And that variegated tooth look. Okay, smearing. This is one of these times when I'm so delighted that I have a video camera, because writing this down in a direction clearly without a visual aid would be very difficult. So this is one of those where I definitely recommend video. I always get a little sorry for myself when I do my loose projects and I'm writing directions, because they're the hard ones to describe. Bring that leaf into its back end here. We don't want it too light right there though. That's going over that right there, so we need to blend that in dark. So this needs to come out. Just kind of chopping it in, just giving it that variegation and width. Okay. Kind of that multicolored leaf. And what I'm really wanting right now is to loosen up my entire background. So let's go wide again. Alright, so I've got all these leaves sticking out there. Blah, 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 blah. Alright, so how do I, if I want to, let's go ahead and finish the leaves. Let's give them some veins. Get out the Raphael. We'll let it soak for a few minutes on my brush basin. And I think we'll go ahead and vein in the light. And so we'll mix a little bit of our white in with our light green. And so I'll brush mix that. Okay. And then I'm going to pull towards me. Right, and I'm just going to give it a lovely little vein. Okay, now that's kind of bright, and I'm kind of okay with that because we're going to do something to it. Okay, so pull them out. I'm going to have water in my brush, so if I get dry and I'm not flowing, I'm going to go back and put a little bit more water in. You want it too flowing. Okay, amazing that just a couple of veins do for a leaf. Okay, so I'll do the rest of these. All right, I've got that done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line next to my veins on one side with a dark mix of the green, the Hazard Dark Green, and Uniform. Okay, so I'm just going to give that little underline, and that's going to give me a look of those veins being a little bit more detailed and raised. Okay, so we'll just do all of that detail. So instead of trying to highlight on top of my veins, what I'm doing is underlining them, and that gives them the depth that I wanted without having to have some kind of monstrous skill level to be able to give that extra, I guess, depth effect. All right, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to use the white tinted with just a hair, a little bit of the Hauser Light Green, and we're going to use our Raphael and its little pointy tippy toe, and we're going to highlight the middle of the main part. So you don't take it all the way out. You're going to highlight the middle where the middle should be highlighted, if that makes sense, where the light's hitting it, where the lines are big enough to be thick enough to get sunlight on them. So more to the middle, not enough white. Make sure you're highlighting. Okay, that'll give us just that one more little element of depth. Okay, and yes, of course, they're all sticking out like sore thumbs now, right? Because that's the only thing that has any definition on it. But we'll be happy that we did these first in a little bit. I'm ruining the effect of the poor Lazy Susan by not taking the little plug out and allowing it to spin, because that makes it just that much easier when you're trying to change positions and get a better look. Whoops. To tell you, the Raphael brush is the most expensive brush I've ever owned in my life, but it will last you 30 years. And if you think about a liner brush that will last you 30 years, and it will give you the best performance of any liner brush you've ever had, if you are at a place where you think that you could use a better tool for lining that will last you a long time, then the Raphael is absolutely fantastic for you. Okay, now we need to get some shading detail and some of that kind of stuff going on. So we're going to go into the dark green and blue mix. I'm in my, what do you call this brush? The angle shader. And then we're going to go right over the tops. I kind of almost got it like a float, but I'm really kind of glazing. I'm going to go right over the tops of the leaf vein detail. That's going to give it more of an effect of it being shadowed down, because it'll still be there, but it will be shadowed like the rest of the leaf, versus if you just painted it right on top, then it might look like a little more fake. You wouldn't get the color variation that you were supposed to have. Okay, it should almost disappear at the back. This one's a little bit sheer. Okay, I think I'm probably going to have to go one deeper and darker, but we'll do that later. And we'll plug it. Gives us the depth and the detail. I picked on this side. I don't have any real reason why I picked on this side to shade. I'm going to make that be my light source side, I guess. I ask with a question mark. Okay, so now that just gives us some of, and then on this one I have it on the opposite or the same side. Maybe that's right. Not thinking too much about that right now. Okay, so now they're at least looking like leaves. I'm happy with that part. Okay, kind of just smearing this paint around. I'm leading with the heel of the brush. That's the clean part, or basically clean part. It's a very painterly, dabbly thing that I'm doing here. I'm placing paint and munching it around. Okay, I'm adding a little bit of traditional raw sienna with the medium, and I'm just going to do these, the light side of the leaves that are to the middle, and not all of them, and not everywhere. Okay, that's just going to add a little bit of depthy, accenty kind of something or another. I could add just a little bit of that yellowy kind of back in there. Maybe something else is happening we can't quite see. Maybe there's some dead leaves maybe back there. Maybe, I don't know. That's my theory. Okay, that's just maybe softening our edges a little bit. Okay, and I think at this point we need to get out a darker green. Okay, I've got out black green, and I don't have it shaken very well. We'll see how it does. And then I've got to separate my leaves just a little bit more and sink them into their background. So I'm going to let that trail up and just do some of that softening. And dibbly-dabbling to shade that. Okay, now see how that just sunk that right on in. Okay, that is exactly what I was looking for. A little bit, and I'm just scribbling with my brush. Okay, I don't want to make it look dead, so be careful of that. That can be a problem sometimes. We get so carried away, we make things. And then we want to kind of make sure that these are all sinking into where those flowers are going to be. Now the flowers are reaching on them, but and this is a really sunk over leaf over here. I'm really not floating. I really have taken most of the medium out of my paint. I don't have any medium in my paint. I mean, I have a little bit of water. Okay, and I think that that's doing it. That is exactly so. I haven't even reloaded water, but there's just enough wetness in my brush, I guess. I don't know. Also need some more. Okay, look at the difference between this side and that side. It's going to be fairly dark down here. Okay, and then we'll repeat over here. This one's on top, so we'll shade over there. So I'm just tickling a little bit of stuff at this one here that's over the top of this other one. Okay, that just kind of outlines it. It shows you that it's there, but it's not trying to scream at us too much. And then it can cast a shadow. Okay, when you look at your painting, try to look at it from a distance and make sure that you are not creating one area that's too big of a focal point, meaning like I don't want a big dark spot right there that takes your eye right there. So squint. That squinting is invaluable. Squint at it and see if you are indeed, creating something too dark, too uniform, too patterny. I love those too much words. Okay, now I've run out of liquid in my brush and it's time to put some more in. Let's see, where did we... Alright, so I'm liking the leaves now. And now I think it's time to start our flowers. Alright, so we want to re-establish where our snowball lines are. Okay. Make sure it makes sense to us. These are obviously very easy. Okay. And maybe we'll start on the 3 side over here. Okay. Some stuff. I have a new ultra wide table. So I'm seeing if I can't get a little bit more speed out of turning things and stuff like that. So I have to get used to working in a non-cramped way. The colors that I have out on my palette are all the blues that you have. We've got the blue violet, uniform blue, country blue, wild orchid, soft lilac, and a deep periwinkle. You'll notice that my country blue is in between these 2 colors. Looks like a mix of those 2 colors. It's not really necessary, but it was part of the base background. And oh, and I've got white. Okay, and I've got my mediums. So I've got the faux finishing medium as well. Okay, and I'm dry. Make sure that I'm all, nothing is wet and stuff. I'm going to dress my brush in the faux finishing medium. This is going to get me a little bit of slip and slime. Okay, I'll get both of these on camera so you can see. Okay, now what I want to do is I think we'll go into blah blah blah. Maybe a mix of the uniform blue with the bright blue. Okay, a little bit of faux finishing medium. Alright, and now what I want to do is give myself a darker base down here. So what I'm going to do is give myself some kind of leafy strokes. I'm going to bring it all the way to the wall, almost like a base coat. Leafy strokes over here. Time to take out. That was like a little line. And it's just a little slipping, slapping moment. It's all brush mixed. I'm going to kind of do that around this outer edge. We're going to reach over to where our leaves are. Now we're going to go and we're going to walk towards, that's giving us our rounded shape, right? Now I'm going to walk into this purpley color, a little bit of medium dirty brush, okay? And I'm going to set that down onto but next to the dark leaves. These do not have to do anything but be little paint blobs of color right now, because what's happening is you're creating depth, okay? So now I'll spin it around. You see how wonderful spinning this is. I'm just going to fill in that middle area. Okay, but notice that because my dark background is back there, I'm not going to have any problem with light things showing where they shouldn't show. Okay, now I'm going to go dirty brush straight over into the soft lilac color. And now I'm going to decide that my center of interest is going to be high front. Okay, and so right on top, dirty brush, I'm going to dirty that together almost like a mix. I'm going to give myself a couple of top petally things. Okay, that's going to be a little bit more petally than not, and keeping it very dirty brushed with that color. A little bit more push, push, push than not push, push, push. And don't set anything on top of anything that was there in that spot before, if that makes any sense. Don't try to hit the same spot twice. Okay. And just brush mixing equal amounts. Okay, so now we've got that coat. So now we have what looks like a little bit of a hydrangea moment going on. Now before we add anything crazy, I'm going to brush mix, dirty brush, the purpley color, whatever that is, wild orchid. And I'm going to accent maybe up front. Okay, that's a little bit bright. Maybe we'll mix that with this darker purple. Okay, we'll accent a couple of spots, a couple little petals. Pick up some medium if I'm dragging. That's just going to give us a little bit of something going on, you know? And then maybe we'll go back over into our dark blue and brush mix in with that a little bit and bring out that color into this area here. Add some of that. I mean, like I'm just splotching it right now. The most important thing with hydrangea painting is that you block in your values. So you don't want to have a dark blue band, then a light blue band, and then a really white band. You want to have them just creep up in half steps, little baby steps of values. Okay, so next we'll go into the more bright, the soft lilac, a little bit of brush mix between those colors that I had out, and then I'm going to, not enough, I'm going to make little 4 and 5 petaled flowers. Maybe brush over towards the darker. I want everything the same. But so these petals are going to blend with those petals, are going to blend with those petals, etc. Okay, as I get into the darker areas, I have to mix more dark in with my brush, into my brush, I guess. Okay, now I have a little area there. I need another brush. Okay, I've got a smaller brush, so now I'm into a number 6. I'll dress it in my medium. I'm going to go into the white and the soft lilac, mostly soft lilac. And now I'm going to, oops, maybe a little bit more white. I'm going to create a little bit more lighter, whiter petals that are slightly smaller. They're younger petals on top. Oops. They can be almost as big, but they need to lean to almost not as big, if that makes sense. They just need to be a little bit smaller. Okay, and that's going to give us our look. Now, notice that that looks like a giant eyeball of color right there. That's important not to do. So as I'm sneaking my way out, I'll brush mix into a different color and it will calm itself down. I'll use bigger pressure on my brush. Okay. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to have a little bit of glazing going on. Okay. So we have a little bit of purple, we have a little bit of this. I'm going to have to go ahead and paint the next flowers because I can't glaze this until it's dry, and the medium is going to make it dry a little bit slower, which is good. Okay, so next what we'll do is we'll paint the flowers next door, and that will be the same exact technique, which of course I can't remember what that was because I'm making it up as I go along. But okay, so we've got our dark. This repetitive project will be a training lesson for me, right? Okay, so we make sure we go over our leaves, but don't cover everything that we did before. All right, so that's got to go out. Okay, almost like there's 2 hydrangeas there. Maybe we'll make this be another hydrangea down here. And then this can be maybe another one back over here. All right, so I've got the mix of the 2 dark blues. I've got it with my medium. Okay, I'm taking it up and over my leaves. It should be on top of the leaves. And then I'm going to round it out over here. Okay, then we'll go into the next lightest, brush mixing. And then that's going to pull in. That's too bright. That next color. Okay. I'm going to leave the dark next to the flower. We can glaze some of that down as well. I'm going to make these be two extra little ball flowers down there. Okay, and this is where you could probably go in and do all of them at the same time. Now we're going to go into the light color and build that flower to the front. He's a little irregular-y flower. We need to fix him. And this guy can have a couple little petally boos. He doesn't get as bright, so he's going to stop probably right about there, this little guy at the back here. I'm going to go over while I have these colors in my brush, and I'm going to get some medium. Pardon me. Bring that over the leaves. Move down the chain. Too bright. Now when we get into these smaller flowers, I don't have as much space to make them graduate as much, so you're going to maybe use a smaller brush, but be careful not to make them different flowers. So that'll be the highest that we go. We didn't use that color right here, so we could get some of that in there. And now I think we'll go ahead and finish the other side so that we have all of those at the same place, and then we'll repeat those steps over here and then finish all of them together. Okay, I got these to the blocked in stage. Basically the same technique, first 3 steps, that kind of thing. I'm going to take with a lot of glaze and wipe out my brush, and I'm going to make some flowers that are coming out that we can't see. Really just soft little blue splotches that will add some depth to. And it will also, when we're bringing them around our leaves, notice I'm using my fingers to scribble. When I'm bringing them around my leaves, it's going to make the leaves blend just a little bit. I'm liking my leaves now, so don't get me wrong. I don't see anything wrong with them, but it will help my leaves blend a little bit more with the background, or the background color of the blue. And what that will do for me is it will make the leaves retire a little bit more. And so I'd like them to retire just a little bit more. So that just brings a little bit, one more layer of something happening out there. Just make sure you bring it all the way to the leaf. Okay, now one of the things that I did here is I got this done and then I stopped, and if I'm not wet in wet, you almost really need to work your flowers wet in wet all the way through. So I would recommend that. Okay, so now I'm going to go in. I'm going to have to be a little more careful about my color choices to build the highlight area. And now I'm going to finish this flower wet in wet. Because then the colors underneath blend together. Now I'm going to back it off because I'm getting away from the highlight area. We can add, we haven't got really any of the purple yet into this. Add a little bit of that, and don't forget we're going to be glazing. So when we glaze, that's going to bring things together. Okay, so there's one highlight area. I'm using my medium a little bit more so that I have that blending with whatever's behind it effect. It makes it a little sheerer. Okay, time to unlock so I can turn. If I'm not turning, my strokes aren't going to be coming from the right side. I mean, I'm not going to leave that ball shape there. Okay, got to do a little dark there. I'm going to go ahead and finish that under to give it a little wet in wet. Now, if you notice when I'm building these, how I've got puddles of paint and I'm just going and picking up puddles of paint. just scribbling around, and I'll move over to my darker side as I need to. Okay, so bring that, we haven't got any of our color in there. I can bring that right into that mix and let that just kind of carry itself along. Could do this with the glazing, I don't need to force it. Back over here to the darker. Make things settle down so that way you get that transition. Okay, and if I don't have that out here, I'm going to move into my darker colors and give them that transition. I could re-wet with my dark color and then march forward. That's certainly an option. Okay, then we go forward. I haven't moved into my smaller brush yet. I'm still just building the zones, if you will. Okay. Looking across the aisle, I'm wondering, yeah, I guess I have them about right. This is where it's nice you can see what you've done. I need a little more medium. This medium works really nicely. It is not sticky like some of the faux finishing mediums can be. That is a really nice thing. I get really irritated when I'm activating things and things are, you know, doing all kinds of strange stuff. This is very, very stable. I think you're going to like it. My brush is getting a little glommed with paint. I think it's going to be time for me to wash it here in just a minute. Let me wipe it out, at least. I don't want to ruin the dirt that I have in there, you know. Got the good dirt. But at the same time, my brush is making such wide strokes. That I'm a little out of control here. A couple more of those up here. Alright, one more to block. Medium and dark, I'm going to re-wet. Don't need to re-wet all the way out, I just need to re-wet where I'm going to start blending colors together. That's getting lighter on me. Wipe that out. It's kind of interesting painting these flowers because I'm trying to keep a balance between a purple and a blue. And so the dance is going to be, when you do these flowers, I think what you're going to find very appealing is you will find if you're not a purple person, you will absolutely lean to the blue. And if you are a big purple person, you'll end up with a very, very purple flower. And it's fun to sit in a class and see. That's the thing I think I hate the most about teaching this way, is I don't get to see the variations. On loose projects, they will always vary slightly by your touch or the light in your studio, your eyesight. My husband just had cataract surgery, and he says everything is brighter, so he might have made a very bright painting, striving to get it to a bright place. You know, that kind of thing. So it's real interesting to see how the variations play. Okay, so this is where we're at. Wash my brush, and now it's time to go on with the top features. Okay, so we need to do those little petite flower petals. That's going to be the combination of the white and the, I'll load my brush in the medium. You can thin the medium. I think it said with water as well, which means it's water friendly. Okay, I want just a little bit of purple in my white. Now these are going to be more stroke-like. Little flower centers. Ah! Picked up just maybe a little bit too much. More white. back it down to the blue. But by putting these little clusters down lower like this, then what we're doing is we're giving the whole flower a tighter texture. And that means that you can have those big blobby kind of things, and then you can give it a little bit tighter texture if you want to. Okay. And come over here, a little medium. Medium's going to make it sheer. That's going to allow the colors to show through. Okay, now we don't have enough of the medium kinds of texture-y things going on over here. Same thing here. Okay, and we want to have no transitional issues. Okay, we'll bring in the white down here, a couple little pods. Very little something down here. Okay, same thing over here. Bring it out to the blue. Okay, we'll give it those little highlights. And then we want to vary it. You don't want it to be the same all the way down. I could go and grab some of that pink. Grab the pink and move into blue. This little brush is the one that's going to give you the transition. Okay, now I'm liking that, so now it's time to start glazing. So now for our glazing, we're going to use this lovely, ginormous, soft floating type angle shader. And I'm going to load with water. Load in my dark blue. And I'm just going to softly shade. Not too much water. Down in there. This is going to make things sheer and transparent. I think we'll go ahead and lock this in. Don't want anybody sliding around right now. Shading on the back end with the dark blue. I have enough water to float. Okay, float down to the edges. Float over that green to make it all family down there. Float down here. Glaze, float. Whichever words you want to use. Maybe that's shaded next to there. Okay, I'll give that just that little bit. So If you use a small brush, you're gonna struggle with this. You need to have a big, wide. The angle shader gives you the toe to tuck in where you want it. Okay, we're getting a little bit electric-y blue. Okay, but that's no problem. Okay, now we need to sneak in a little bit of our blue on our leaves. Okay, that way they're not out there by themselves, looking like they don't belong to the family. Not all of the leaves. Oops. Okay, now we're going to go into a little bit of our, whatever pinky color this is. And let's give ourselves just a little bit of a dance of a pink. Washing right over, very thin, very sheer. Okay, on a few of our areas where I tucked in the green, I don't like it, and I want to darken it down, and I want to neutralize those back corners, so I'm using the blue to just do that. Okay, same thing over here, just neutralize that just a little bit. Okay, and that makes me happier. Okay, and I think we're going to use our medium, medium and a little blue apparently, and our white plus our little lilac color. We're going to do some very top structured petals. But not on everybody. Okay, so we need somebody to be important. So everybody can't have the same importance. So now that's an important flower. Okay, we'll go back down over here, and this guy can't be as important. He's way down here in the back, but he does need some structure. I think, did I forget him when I was painting? He needs a little bit of highlight structure in there. Back him down. Okay, and this guy over here gets some little important highlights. Oops. Okay, now I'm looking at it and I see just a little bit of glaringness. So we want to make sure that we're not being too white all over the place. Okay. We'll go over here, do a little the same. We had a big, not a debate, but we had a big conversation about whether or not to show the same steps of everything, and we decided that it would be better to default on showing you too much than not showing you enough. So if you're bored, fast forward. And if you need more, then keep watching. And so we decided. Wow, that was very wrong. A little spit takes it all away, huh? Okay, I decided I want to take my highlights all the way out to my edge. So we're going to bring these out. To soften them around a little bit, and then maybe I'll have to deepen this little back area. Okay, so now I'm a little bit misshapen. Case, I think that's okay. And maybe I don't want them out there. Okay. Now we got to come up with some centers. Okay, what we're doing is we're mixing I'm using my Raphael liner, and I'm putting in little blurbly, randomly placed blobs that are kind of good sized. Okay, I don't want a million of them. Then I'm going to rinse my brush, and I'm going to go in with a very pointy tippy tip, and right on top I'm going to give it that white highlight. Okay, and that gives us a couple of top, front, center little flower petals. Okay, I've taped off on either side of my little blue band, and I'm going to go ahead and use the silver powders, and then that's what it looks like. And you just take some out and put it on your palette, and you can suspend it into any liquid. You never want to sprinkle this on our project. Ever, 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 ever. And you probably don't want to do that either. I just managed to make a big mess, haven't I? And you use gloss varnish. And you pour some of that out, if you can get it to pour out. Okay, then you mix a little bit of your varnish, I've got too much varnish out, in with your silver. Look at how beautiful that is, can you see it? Mix it kind of thick so you only have to do one coat. You can adjust how much pigment is in there. If you want it sheer, use a lot of medium. Okay, wipe that off. Then look at what's cool. The fingertip daubers have now got caps on them. I'm in love. Alright, so I'm going to use the fingertip dauber for more control, and then I'm just going to go down along and dab that all on and take off my tape. This is the same concept as the ink sweeper. It won't allow the paint or the medium to bleed under. Okay, and I'll just continue that and do all 4 of my bands of silver. Okay, and of course, here's my bands, and here's, I think this has turned out so great. Here's what I want to do. I want to take and spatter some. I always have time to spatter. I always think there's a reason to spatter. I'm going to do my dark blues. Move this in so I keep it on my palette. I'm going do my dark blues down over here. Kind of just trail them along. I need to get a nice deeply dark blue out. Now if I slide this is going to be one of those times where I need my artist buddy. Because if I slide this around and I had the back painted, I would be making a ginormous, big, stinking mess. Don't want to do that, so I'm going to lift it up. This way I can rotate it so all angles are correct for spattering. Okay. Turn it around so it's easier for me. Okay, we need a dark blue. I think maybe a Prussian. Not Payne's, Prussian, but Payne's Gray is what I chose. So I'm going to mix a little bit of Payne's Gray in with my other two blues, the dark blues, to get me a really good dark. I always spatter off. Not dark enough. I really don't feel you could ever spatter enough. Let's go ahead and spatter with a little bit of our black green, or Hauser dark green, in our leafy area. Like they're spattering out into it. And of course you've got to spatter with white. Keeping it in more of the center of interest. And I think there's plenty of room to spatter with a little bit of the silver as well. And that's just going to add that little bit of reflective quality. You're not going to quite know what's going on. Alright, I think we can call the ball on that. Okay, awesome. Thank you for joining me for this blue hydrangea project.